Hey guys, so welcome to episode 8 of the podcast, the Vibrant People podcast. It's going to be just me again today. Joe has been away at a festival with his family. He's back today. He's deep in client work. So today I'm going to be running you through a few questions. I asked our clients, what's the biggest question you want answering right now? I also asked on Instagram and Facebook as well. So I've written a list of the ones that stood out to me the most. There are quite a few here. I'm actually going to try and get through them all. There's about 10 that require some pretty significant depth, I would say, to get through them to do them justice, but we will do our best. There's also some exciting news happening behind the scenes for Vibrant People. We potentially are opening a studio in Cornwall, which is primarily going to serve as our office, but we're also going to start doing some movement classes there. We're going to host a few events. It's going to be a beautiful space right in the center of town. And this has really come from a part of me that really wants to give back to the community. It's something that's been on my mind for some time. I think it's a really missing part of a lot of modern living. A lot of people, we live next to people and we don't even know our neighbors nowadays. I definitely think that community or lack thereof is a big reason that people are struggling in so many ways in this modern world. So we have an amazing community here, and this is a great opportunity for me to step into that, create something, be the change, and hopefully provide some service and value to people in the real world rather than online. And it's also going to serve as a hub for Vibrant People, so we can host our events there, we can do our podcast there. It's obviously going to be our office, it's going to be our space, we're going to do our content there, we're going to make it super cool. I've already got some amazing ideas of how we're going to set it all up. Obviously, we're going to have all the equipment set up there so we can show you guys what's what and what the talk, and make it very easy for myself and the team to do the thing as well. So all very exciting. Right. Let's get into some of these questions. So the first one, how do you stay consistent when life is chaos? Kids, work, travel, all the above and more. Consistency is a really difficult thing. And I think from my belief and probably from what you've seen, if you follow me on social media, I really do believe that consistency is the most important part of the puzzle. Intensity, which is kind of the route that most people go down when they embark on a health and fitness journey, is often futile, and it feels like the right choice if you've been out of action for a long time, or you just want those results fast, or you want things to change fast. But intensity often is the enemy of consistency, and it doesn't typically lead to greater results. Now, consistency is very difficult for the modern man or woman with a family, with work, with travel. It's very, very difficult. Now, I could talk about this topic for hours and hours, but I want to make sure that whoever's asked this has very, very practical things to take away from this. So the first thing I would say is that a lack of consistency often comes from wanting to do too much. The reason that we feel like we want to do too much can be from many different places. The first one is the desperation, like it feeling urgent in the moment. Maybe there's pain, maybe there's desire, that need to change. So we go for intensity, we go for volume in order to try and bring that result closer to us or faster to us. But the problem with that is that the requirement to maintain it and to stay consistent is much higher, so we struggle to stay consistent. The other thing is that we look at what we used to be doing in the past, before we had kids, before work was so demanding, before we were traveling. Maybe you're 35 or 40 and you're looking back to what you could do when you were 20. The problem with that is that you had way more time, you had less responsibilities. Now, when we look back at what we were doing, we either try and do it again and fail because it just doesn't fit with our current life, or we actually feel guilty and we feel like, what's the point? If I'm not doing that, then there's no point doing anything at all. So we could have actually done something, but it's our own mindset that is getting in the way, right? We're blocking ourselves by feeling like, oh, if we can't do that, then we're going to do nothing at all. So what I would suggest if you struggle with consistency is to really strip it back to fundamental core things and give yourself the lowest barrier to entry as possible. So what we typically call this with clients is the daily non-negotiables. So what are those 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you do every single day in order to move the needle forward? These are not necessarily massive things, but if you take action on those things rather than doing nothing at all, you're going to get great results. So for me, my daily non-negotiables are eat mainly whole foods, get 7 to 9 hours sleep, walk 10,000 steps, and do roughly 20 plus minutes of movement, whether that's strength, mobility, or cardio, surfing, running, whatever, every single day. If I do those things, then the day has been a success. Most of those things you can do with very, very little time, okay? So the workout itself, 20 minutes, not much to ask. Walking a bit throughout the day, walk to work, drop the kids off at school, etc. Eat whole foods, you're probably going to be eating anyway, so make the best choices you can. And getting sleep, obviously it depends on your life, kids, work stuff, social, but doing what you can to protect that sleep as well. None of that is crazy, right? None of that's rocket science, and none of that is asking too much. However, I would actually say that those things have got me where I am today. It's not been 3-hour workouts. It's not been this specific training plan. It's not been this specific diet. It's not been this crazy supplement or regime. It has been those core habits that have been done consistently year after year after year after year. And when I say consistently, I will never break out of those habits more than 1 to 2 days without getting back on track. So what I want you to do is figure out what are those daily non-negotiables for you. Make the barrier to entry as low as possible so you actually take action on them. And then on the days, if you can do more, that's great, right? But on those hard days, in fact, build the plan for those hard days. Don't build the plan for the days where it isn't chaos. Design your plan around the chaos. Kids, work, travel. What does the most chaotic day look like? And what can you do to succeed on one of those days? That becomes your core plan. And then anything else that you do on top of that is just a bonus. Okay? And you'll find you can be much more consistent. Consistency is not about willpower. It is about having a system that fits your current life. On top of that, I would also say embracing flexibility as well. Because let's say, right, I'm going to do 30 minutes workout 4 times a week. If you don't have 30 minutes, you might go, oh, I don't have 30 minutes. I'm just going to do nothing at all. Well, what about going, well, I do have 15 minutes. So how can I make those count? So consistency is really about taking imperfect action. And imperfect action comes from adaptability and it comes from flexibility. So make the best of the situation that you've got. Set the barrier to entry low, set a list of daily non-negotiables that move the needle forward, and surround all of this around your worst day so that it can handle the worst days and it feels easy on the best days. And then if you want to do more, you've got the space to do that. So I hope that answers that question. So next one, what does your typical workout session look like? So this has obviously changed a lot over the years. I'm currently experimenting with something a little bit different at the moment. So yeah, I'll just tell you what I'm doing at the moment. Most of what you see on my social media is kind of what I've been doing for a long time. At the moment, I'm basically experimenting with what I call the no days off system, or I'm calling it now the no days off system. So what I'm basically doing is a strength session, which will be typically 30 minutes, mainly body weight. That would be, at the moment, I'm actually doing like a push-pull legs split. Typically, that's not something that I've done. Most of our clients are doing more full body workouts with a split, but they are full body. I'm experimenting with push-pull legs. I'll do one strength workout. Then the next day will be purely mobility. So I'll do anything from, it could be 30 minutes to 45 minutes of pure active mobility. Most of this isn't just static stretching. It's like very active, moving through ranges of motion, lots of engagement. It's difficult, and doing the whole body. In the past, and typically what our clients do is actually more bite-sized chunks. That's a bit easier to be consistent with over time, especially if you have a busy schedule. I'm just experimenting with like this longer chunk. And then the third day, I'll do some kind of cardio. So could be going for a run, going for a surf. Last resort, we have a Peloton at home. So that's usually if the kids have gone to bed and I haven't had a chance, the day's been super busy with like client calls, meetings, all that sort of thing. Then after the kids have gone to bed, I'll just do a bit of zone 2 on the Peloton. And then I've just been looping that around endlessly, basically with no rest days. And then when I do take a rest day, it's what I call a natural rest day. So it's not a planned rest day. It means that when a day comes where just the day's been so busy or there just hasn't been an opportunity, that's what I would call a natural rest day. So the thing that I love about the natural rest day, and I think you need to be already quite consistent and confident in your training plan to initiate the natural rest day. But the beauty of the natural rest day is that, let's say you plan to work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? And the other days are your rest days. If something happens on Friday, for example, and then you're busy at the weekend, it means that you can't catch that session up. If you do a natural rest day, it means that whenever that day that's too busy comes up, the rest day is due anyway, so it just falls nicely into place, and it allows you to take action on every single moment that's available. Like I say, I wouldn't recommend for this someone just starting out, but if you are quite advanced and you've been doing this a long time and you've built consistency, the natural rest day is amazing. Now, when you ask me what I'm typically doing in a workout, you're probably asking me what I'm doing in my strength sessions. So as I say, typically I'll start with a little bit of active mobility, just some basic movements just to get moving. And then I usually do around 3 to 4 exercises at the moment. If I'm doing the push-pull leg split, it'll be mostly body weight. I'll usually do 3 to 4 sets. I'll take 2 minutes rest, typically between exercises. And I'm pushing 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. On a pushing workout, I'll usually do a push-up variation, a pike push-up variation, some kind of dip variation, and then maybe just something extra on the end. I don't really do any isolation. I do a bit of weights on my legs if I am in a gym. If I'm at the park, I'll typically just do body weight. And that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. A lot of the time in the past, I'd be doing more supersets because they're super efficient. So a superset, for example, an antagonistic one where it would be a pushing movement followed by a pulling movement, or a pulling movement followed by a leg movement. Absolutely incredible if you're short on time. This is just something that I am doing right now. I wanted to be honest with you about my current regime versus typically what I use over the last, 5+ years. So that's typically what I'm doing at the moment. But in the past, the supersets are absolutely incredible for fitting things into a short workout. As you've seen from what I've said, I'm not doing anything crazy, right? No one is doing anything magic when it comes to workouts. The most important thing with any workout is enough variation, you're covering the whole body, and most importantly, progressive overload. So you're actually improving, you're getting stronger, you're pushing yourself every single workout. So your body then reacts. It reacts to the stimulus that you've placed upon it. It responds, it grows, and gets stronger. As long as you're implementing that and there's enough volume there and enough frequency, enough consistency, and obviously eating, resting, sleeping, etc., you will get the results that you want. What do you actually eat in a typical day, and how do you keep that simple without tracking every bite? Okay, so I usually 3 meals a day. sometimes 4. And I will typically follow the same formula for every meal. So when I'm building a meal, the first thought is, where is the protein coming from? So for breakfast, that could be eggs, could be Greek yogurt or skyr. Lunch, dinner, typically the same. It could be ground beef, it could be chicken, salmon, sea bass, prawns, like whatever. So I'm thinking, where is that protein source coming from? If you go into a meal with a protein forward mindset, then it means that you're giving yourself the best opportunity to actually hit your protein targets without having to track it, without having to think about it too much. After doing this for a while, especially if you do track temporarily just to see what it actually looks like and gain that awareness, not as a diet itself, not to control, just to understand, then you will get a really good feel for what it actually takes to hit those targets. So protein first, then depending on the meal, I'm thinking healthy fats, I'm thinking nutrients. So healthy fats could be olive oil, it could be like the oils from fish, it could be avocado, could be some kind of nuts. Nutrients, I would be in that category, I'm putting like fruits and vegetables. So let's say it's breakfast and it's some skyr or Greek yogurt, I'm thinking berries, some banana, etc. If it's lunchtime, it might be some greens, some cavolo nero, some carrots, tomatoes, whatever else with olive oil. Then I'm also thinking about maybe a whole food carb. I'm not massive on eating carbs in the sense of like potatoes and rice and that sort of thing, like in the day. Typically, that's not because I'm low carb by any chance. I actually eat like 300 to 400 grams of carbs a day, but most of that actually comes from fruit in the day. And then in the evening, when we're having family dinner together, we'll typically have like either potatoes, rice, sweet potatoes, quinoa, pasta, even. Pasta. As long as it's good pasta, it shouldn't really cause you any issues. It's, the dose makes the poison, all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's typically the formula I'm following. So protein first, some kind of healthy fat, vegetables or fruit, optional carb, and then obviously flavorings. So get a great quality sea salt, loads of herbs and spices, lemons, limes, apple cider vinegar, balsamic, soy, sauce, all those sort of things. Like having a well-stocked flavor cupboard is really, really important. So to be super, super specific, I'll tell you what I ate yesterday. So for breakfast, I had Greek yogurt, a skyr, with berries, apple, persimmon, banana, some nuts, some sprouted sunflower seeds, and a black coffee. So that was breakfast. The other thing I would have, so I had this morning, would be like a 5-egg omelette with some avocado and some rocket and olive oil. For lunch yesterday, I had ground beef, like 300 grams, so there's quite a bit of protein in there, cooked in olive oil, with some sweet potato and some cavolo nero. And then afterwards I had some fruit. I think I had like an apple, a couple of bananas, so quite a bit of fruit. And then for dinner, my wife made some like spicy ground beef with like ginger and garlic, with some sticky rice, with some greens. She made a little curry with yellow courgettes from the farm down the road on the side. And then afterwards, I had some watermelon, some dark chocolate, and a cup of tea. And I probably had another coffee at some point in the day. So you can see it's simple in the sense of like, here are the ingredients, but super delicious. Like no flavors were sacrificed in the making of this meal plan. Okay. So really just try and break it down to those component pieces. Choose elements that you enjoy. There's no reason to force yourself to eat things that you don't actually enjoy. Bring those things together, and that can form the basis of what you do. And one thing I hear a lot is, eating healthy is boring. And the fact of the matter is that most people actually eat the same foods every single day. They just don't realize it. So it's just the idea of eating simple meals that puts people off. But the reality is they're actually already eating simple things. They're just maybe not the optimal choice. So maybe the first exercise is to go, what do I usually eat over a week? What does that look like? You'll probably see there's a hell of a lot of repetition. And then it's just about replacing those things that are a bit more nutritious and moving you towards your goals. What should I do when I fall off track for a week or two? Do I reset, ramp things back up, or just pretend it didn't happen? Okay, great question. So I think similar to the consistency question, I don't think leading with intensity, if you take a few weeks off, is a good idea, because the chances are it's just going to put you back in that endless loop of up and down, up and down, up and down. So I would take heed of everything I said on that first question in terms of consistency, and that might actually solve the problem of why you fell off in the first place. Okay. If you can figure out how to stay consistent, whatever happens, then you won't ever have to deal with this situation. And I say this from experience. I honestly have not missed more than 2 days of good eating or working out or just those core habits for decades. That's full illness. That's like children being ill, like crazy work periods, whatever challenges. If you are consistent and your daily non-negotiables have become habits and they're built into your life, then you'll never have to worry about falling off track. But let's assume a more challenging scenario, just to challenge myself. Let's assume that you had a pretty decent plan in place and you were being consistent and then you fell off track. So it wasn't the fact that the plan was too intense. Again, I would just step back into what you were doing before. And as you say, just pretend that it didn't happen. I think that's the best way to do it, because the mistake people make, let's say you're dieting and you're trying to lose weight, for example. You're making good progress and then suddenly something throws you off. You gain a bit of weight back. You take a week or two off. And then the impact or the reaction to that or the response is to then go, oh, we need to double down. I'm going to reduce my calorie deficit even further and go for more aggression to make up for that missed time. That is going to throw you off track. It's much better to just go clean slate. Let's start off where I left off and just keep going. Because at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of life, is a week or two actually going to make any difference? Well, it will if you react with intensity and you end blowing yourself up. But if you actually just get back on what you were doing, stay consistent, stay committed, then you're not going to look back and go, oh man, I wish this would have happened a week before. It's a drop in the ocean. So yeah, exactly what you said for the last point, just pretend that it didn't happen. My throat is seriously tickly today, so I apologize if I cough. How do you know how many calories to have? There's about 1 million calculators online that you can go and have a look. The thing to know about calories is that every single calculation of how many calories you should have is going to be an estimate. So there's the Mifflin St. Jeor, which is typically considered the most accurate one, to my knowledge. That one's going to bring you out in a pretty good place. You're going to enter weight, height, gender, activity level, those sort of things. And that's going to bring you out in a fairly decent place. Obviously, your calorie goal depends on your goal. So if you want to maintain your weight, gain weight, lose weight, and at what rate. So they all have to be brought into consideration. But once you have that number, you have to test it out, give it a test run, because that formula is not always going to work out exactly what you need. So for example, I believe if I put my stats into a calorie calculator, it'll say that I need like roughly 2,900 to attain my weight. But actually, if I eat 2,900, I'll lose weight quite significantly. So for me, my maintenance is more about 3,400, 3,500. So that's come from trial and error, from putting that to the test. So let's say I got 2,900 back. I track my calories for a week. I lose a kilogram of weight. Okay, cool. Let's increase that by 200. Next week, 3,100. Oh, I've lost half a kilo this week. 3,500, 400. Cool. Weight stayed the same. So then you understand where your maintenance is, and then you can go, right, I'm going to adjust from here depending on my goal to then achieve the goal that I want to achieve. If tracking calories is the route that you want to go down, obviously that's a decision in itself. There's a lot of self-awareness, thoughtfulness, and intention in your practices? Thank you so much. My take is that it makes you stand out from other Get Fit programs. So besides us taking that from a compliment that's intended, do you have a specific spiritual or meditation practice that keeps you focused, grounded, and purposeful? Oof. Throwing out the challenging ones today. That's a beauty question. Absolutely beautiful. So firstly, thank you so much for acknowledging that and recognizing that. That is definitely something that's really important to our approach. And hopefully, if you follow me or listen to this, you'll realize that we don't believe that fitness is just about fitness, right? I believe it's the catalyst for a good life. And the lessons that you learn by having a great system, being disciplined, working on yourself, they knock on to time with your family, who you are as a person, your family, your career, basically how you show up in this world. And if you don't address the mindset, the way that you think, the way that you present yourself, your self-awareness, your intention, then I don't think you're going to reach your full potential when it comes to your health and fitness. So in terms of the practices that I have in place, I'm going to be super honest with you. So Joe, our head coach, he has a solid practice in place. I don't want to speak for Joe, but I know that he has a daily breathwork practice, daily meditation practice, daily journaling practice as well. So that's a massive part. And it's, as we talked about the non-negotiables before, they are part of Joe's non-negotiables. For me, it's been something that I've dipped in and out of over the years. I've had journaling practices, I've had meditation practices, I've had breathwork practices as well, but it's not something that is a daily thing for me. It's more of maybe like a weekly thing. The main thing for me, right, let's try and think. So the first one is always questioning what's going on. So that includes how I'm feeling, how I'm reacting, how I'm showing up, how I'm presenting myself, how I'm going about things, asking questions, being curious. I think that's the first one. That's the self-awareness, but also it's self-awareness, and then it's also awareness of the outside world and what's going on and just how things flow on this thing we call Earth, right? Being aware of that, asking the questions to yourself and being curious, I find keeps you very open to challenge. I think I've read a lot of Stoic philosophy over the years, and whilst I don't 100%, it's not like my religion, I don't fully believe in it wholeheartedly above all things, I definitely take a lot from it. And I love the idea that anything that happens is just an occurrence. It's neither good or bad, and it's our interpretation of it which labels it so. So I really try and approach life with that mindset and just try and be that outer observer of everything, even the things that are going on in my own head, and just being hyper aware of just the way things are happening. And I think that's an amazing way to stay focused, to stay grounded, and stay purposeful with what you're doing. The second thing is just to expand your horizons. So reading, taking on knowledge, taking on information, and that doesn't necessarily come from direct sources. It can be indirect in the sense of what can you learn from a fiction book about some mystical abstract world, right? It's not, oh, what can I learn about the diet nutrition 101, right? It doesn't have to be super factual. It's just about taking on knowledge, words, different perspectives, different point of views. I definitely think that information can have a negative impact as well, especially when it comes from like the media and the news, social media. It can confuse us, it can overwhelm us, it can do all sorts of things. But in terms of learning and information that gets us excited and that expands our way of thinking and keeps us open-minded, amazing and incredible for keeping you driven and moving forward. So curiosity, thirst for knowledge, and what's the other one? Spiritual and meditation practices. I mean, I would honestly have to say here that for those that know, like my background is really in yoga. So I'm not a trained yoga teacher by any sense, but my main practice for like over a decade of my life was purely yoga, particularly Ashtanga yoga, Mysore style. And whilst that's not a practice that I do much now, what I've learned from that is that all movement can be meditative. So whether I'm doing strength training, I'm going for a run, I'm going for a surf, I'm just doing some stretches, that inner peace and meditation and focus that you get from the yoga practice that's talked about so much, I bring that into the other movement practices that I do now. So it might even just be going for a walk. I get deep into that and that becomes that moving meditation for me. So I think taking what I've learned from yoga in terms of that internal thought, that introspection, bringing that into other movement practices, which ultimately is the same, right? Yoga, whatever your belief, like yoga originally was not a movement practice, right? The movement part of it was much more modern. So there's literally no reason why those particular movement patterns or poses should be separate from any other movement pattern in terms of how we can go inside and break down what's going on inside this thing. So yeah, I think that would actually be the main one for me. And my main time where I think, I get creative, I break down problems, I reflect is during some kind of movement practice where it's as simple as walking, something as epic as surfing, or something as boring as just doing a strength training session. So I hope that answers that question. It's a great question though. I'm already training, but I'm not seeing visible change. So what am I missing? Okay, great. So two main things come to mind for me here. So the first one is the thing that we're not talking about, which is the nutrition. If your nutrition is not on point, you will probably not see any visible change from your training, whatever you're doing. You would have to be doing something super, super extreme, or you'd be a very fast responder to actually see visual change without addressing your diet in some way. So if you're not seeing any change from your training, the first thing I would be looking at is your nutrition. Now, let's assume that your nutrition is on point, right? You've made some good changes. Now we have to go back to the training. So what's going on there? So I'd be looking at first consistency. Like, are you training consistently every few days for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks? Then I'd be looking at frequency and volume. So how long are you training? What's fitting into that session? How often are you doing that within a week? And then I would be looking at intent. So are you pushing yourself each workout? Are you getting stronger each workout? Are you getting close to failure? Are you looking back over 12 weeks and you're doing completely different movements, or your reps are much, much higher? Okay. If you're not progressing and you're not pushing yourself, then you're not going to actually see the changes that you want. If your goal is fat loss, going back to the diet piece, then the training's not really going to do that by itself. It could do possibly, but the diet is going to be your biggest lever for actually losing fat. And then for your building muscle, that's going to be partly training and partly nutrition as well. How do you find time to work out with everything else going on? And what do you actually say no to? Got some doubled up questions there. How do you find time to work out with everything else going on? And what do you actually say no to? Great question as well. So I would say you'll never find the time to work out. Finding time is just a sort of convenient way of saying, I'll figure it out later, or I'll sort it out later, which later inevitably never comes. You have to make the time. Now, we've talked about this I think we mentioned it in another podcast. I actually did a workshop with the community last week on this, and we call it the tiers of opportunity. And this is about making time in your week and having a safety net of opportunities of when you can work out. So basically what you do is you create a pyramid and you create some layers. Let's give it 3 or 4 layers. Top section of the pyramid is your number one opportunity when you can do your workout. So that could be, it's at 7 a.m. before the kids get up and before I go to work. Then underneath that, you create tiers, and they're in order of how preferred or how optimal they are for you. Optimal is many different things. It's most importantly, how easy is it to actually do it in that slot and take action on it? It's also like, when do you want to do it? When's your energy the best? Those sort of things. They're less important. Number one is, when are you actually going to do it? So you create those tiers. If number one fails, then you've got number two as a backup. If number two fails, then you've got number three as a backup. If number three fails, then you've got number four as a backup. So that's the first thing. Don't find the time. Make the time. Actually create it and understand, where are those opportunities in my day to take action, and then use those tiers as a backup system. The next thing I would say is being adaptable. We've addressed this already, but being adaptable in your workouts is the secret weapon to being consistent and actually having the time to do it and take the action. So the mistake that most people make is that they'll start a program. They might go on ChatGPT. It's like, I want to build some muscle, give me a weekly plan. And it says, right, you need to do 90 minutes, today's chest, next day's back, next day's arms, next day's legs, blah, 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 blah. So there's loads of problems going on there. The first thing is that your workout's 90 minutes. What most people do if they don't have 90 minutes is they'll skip it entirely. 90 minutes is not necessary at all, and it's just going to create more problems than it's worth. If you're a busy person, what are the actual chances of being able to fit a 90-minute workout in, plus get to the gym, plus be able to get changed, showered, both ends, blah, 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 right? It turns into 2 hours or 2 hours and a half. So whether you want to work out for 90 minutes or not is almost unimportant. What I'm saying is, actually be adaptable in the sense of, right, I don't have 90 minutes, but I've got 15. So like, let's make that 15 count, rather than doing nothing at all. So it's actually about, instead of focusing on what you don't have, I don't have 90 minutes, you focus on what you do have. Oh, amazing, I have 15 minutes. So making that perspective shift and actually embracing opportunities is that way that how you make it happen when you have kids, when you have your career, when you have travel, when you have whatever it is jammed into your schedule. Seizing the opportunities rather than waiting for it to come to you. So do the tiers of opportunity exercise. Try and shift your mindset to embrace what you do have rather than you don't. And you'll find it's going to be much easier to actually do the thing and take the action. Is it really possible to get lean without sacrificing family dinners, pints with friends, and holidays? Okay, cool. So the first thing I would say is, what does lean mean to you? If you mean lean in the sense that you're a bodybuilder that's going to step on stage and win Mr. Olympia, then the answer is probably no. You won't be able to do those things. If lean is maybe what you've seen from me on Instagram, so solid abdominal definition, looks athletic, whatever else, then yes, you can enjoy all those things every single week, and you can still do it completely. I'm not sure why people think they need to be so aggressive in order to actually get lean and get those results. I think it's trickled down from maybe bodybuilding. I guess it's more of a sexier sell if it's something extreme. But the truth is that you shouldn't and don't have to sacrifice any of those things in order to get pretty lean. You can get to sub 10% without sacrificing those things. Will you have to have better habits around those things? Yes, 100%, but you don't have to sacrifice them entirely. So the challenge I would say to you is, why we're basically labeling those things. We're assuming that those things are going to be detrimental things, right? So the words family dinner, the words holiday, pints with friends even, why do we naturally assume that they're detrimental? Now, to me, that's a mindset thing. That's a perspective thing. That's going, oh, because it's family dinner, I'm going to eat until I'm absolutely stuffed and I'm going to choose all these crazy foods. I'm going to sink 15 pints over the day with my friends. I'm going on holiday, so I'm going to eat junk food all day. I'm going to drink beers all day. I'm going to laze on the sun lounger all day. So to go down that extreme and basically relinquish responsibility and relinquish your habits that are moving you towards those goals and applying them those scenarios what we're actually doing in this question, is it really possible? Is it possible to get lean without sacrificing family dinners, pints, friends, and holidays? Is actually saying, is it possible to get lean and still relinquish responsibility and partake in hedonism at every single corner? That's what I read that as, because family dinner could be a super healthy meal with all your family sat around, right? Pints with friends could be a half pint of Guinness at the pub over a couple of hours just chatting. A holiday could be hiking every day, going for swims, eating great fresh Greek food, and chatting with friends by a fire pit on an evening, right? So all of those things sit on their own spectrum of choices. And I think the problem that people make is that they relinquish all the responsibility when they step into one of those scenarios. But the truth is that when you're in any of those scenarios, there's still a choice to be made, right? Of course, you can still drink a pint with your friends every week and be lean. Of course, you can have family dinner every night. Of course, you can go on holiday every month. But it's about the choices that you make in those scenarios. And you don't have to be a monk in order to stay on track. It just fits into that whole ecosystem of what you're doing and that balance. You don't even have to be super strict in general to get lean. You really just need to eat whole nutritious foods and be in a slight calorie deficit over a period of time in order to get to that place. In order to maintain it, it's even easier, right? You can eat at maintenance and you can just eat whole foods and you'll be in a great place. Eat enough protein, like the general rules that you know. We eat family dinner together every single night. I don't personally drink anymore, but I could easily go out for a beer a few times a week and still stay lean. We go on holiday all the time, but I take my habits with me. I'll still have a croissant every day. I'll still eat a bit of bread. In the past, I would have had a glass of wine. But generally, those habits are still there. So it's actually about going, do you want this to be a lifestyle, a way of life, or is this an on-plan, off-plan thing? If it's an on-plan, off-plan thing, then you're going to find it impossible to stay lean for the rest of your life because the perspective and the mindset is wrong. But if it's about making this a way of life, then you need to start looking at all these different components of your life, the dinner times, the socializing, the holidays, and think where you can bring those habits into those things as well. And the beauty of that is that when you make this into a way of life and when you bring those habits into every single thing that you do, you realize that you can be in incredible shape and maintain a life full of pleasure and full of hedonism. And every day is fun. And every day you can do things that you enjoy. That is the truth of this. And it's a beautiful thing. So actually, rather than seeing that question as, can I get lean while still abusing myself? See it, actually look at the events themselves and go, what is the thing that I'm getting out of these things? Why is family dinner important to me? Why are pints with friends important to me? Why are holidays important to me? And do I need to indulge in those activities to the intensity that we're potentially talking about here in order to actually have fun? And the chances are the answer is probably no. So think about making this a way of life and you'll find those things can be completely normal and you can be super lean and in amazing shape too. Went pretty deep on that one, but I hope that answers your question and helps you. What's your honest take on supplements? Do they matter at all? Okay, so for me, supplements are problem solvers first and foremost. So they could be a problem solver that solves a problem of convenience. They could be something that solves a problem of deficiency. They could be something that solves a problem of time. There's lots of different things that it can solve. So for example, a protein supplement, do we actually need it? No, we definitely don't, right? We do not need a protein supplement. We can get all the protein we need from the food. However, if you're super busy, you don't have time to cook, maybe you're stuck in the office all day, maybe you're traveling, then protein is going to solve a problem, which is how do I get protein in a situation where I don't have food available, or I don't have time to cook, or whatever the other reason. Then the other thing could be vitamin D, for example. I live in a place where the days are really short, it's really dark, I'm not going to get that natural vitamin D on my skin, so I'm deficient. Okay, cool. Then the supplement solves that problem of climate or location for you. there are definitely some supplements that don't necessarily solve a problem and just provide a performance boosting element. Creatine would be a great example. So creatine is probably the most researched performance supplement out there and the most proven. If you're taking anything outside of like the basic supplements, creatine is probably the one you want to be taking first, because it's the one that's most proven and probably is the one that's going to give you the best results. That is one that's not going to solve a problem necessarily, but it can enhance the results that you're getting. Now, I personally don't really take any supplements. I take a very high quality multivitamin most days. I have protein on hand, but it's used to solve problems, or it's actually used more as a sweet. If I have a sweet craving, then I'll just have a protein shake as a way to just kind of curb that craving, or it's just used for cooking, or I make smoothies for the kids in the morning. So it's not something that I'm going, I must drink this protein shake in order to get results, because I'm getting more than enough protein from my food already. So it's not actually solving a problem of getting protein in. I'm actually using it for other means. From my experience, I think supplements they can be incredible. And there's some amazing supplement companies out there. And there's actually a company that I'm potentially going to be working with soon, who are an incredible company, and not going to name them yet because it's not confirmed and there's some discussions to be had. But if you insert supplements into your life in the right way, they can definitely enhance your results significantly. But the problem that people make is that they use supplements as the solution without actually addressing the core things. So they haven't got their training right, they haven't got their nutrition right, they haven't sorted their stress out, they haven't sorted their sleep out, and then they look for supplements as that simple magic pill. This is going to fix this, this is going to fix this, this is going to fix this. But it's like putting a plaster or a band-aid on like a gaping wound, right? So I always say to people, supplements are there to supplement, right? It's in the name. So get those core things right, and then maybe it's a position to go, okay, cool. How can we enhance this? What would this do? Could this make me feel better? Could this give me more energy? Could this make me sleep better? Right? So you're coming from a place of stability and you've got those foundations right before you start, supplements are more like decorating the house. And then your core habits, your training, your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery, stress are building that foundations of the house. So most people, I would say, get the order wrong. They've got a problem, and the first thing they do is they start looking for the supplement to solve it. They'll probably take it for a bit, spend a lot of money, and then stop taking it, and nothing's really changed, right? Or what they have experienced is just more of a placebo effect. So yeah, that's what I think. Ultimately, problem solvers get the foundations right first, and then definitely look to, you can experiment if that's something that's interesting to you. But for me, at the moment, supplements aren't like a massive part of my protocol. Now, on that one, what I would say is, if you are going, okay, Jake, I understand all that, taken on board, what supplements would you recommend? I would say core supplements, having a protein powder in the house, just as that backup on that busy day or travel, crazy morning, whatever it is. So you can know you can get that in, or if you struggle with appetite or for whatever reason. I do think there's been lots of like up and downs on multivitamins, but I do think I see it more as a bit of an insurance policy. So making sure that you get, I would say with all supplements, make sure that you go for quality, don't go for expense. Get third-party tested supplements so you know that they're actually got what they've said in them, and get ones that are high quality. If you need to spend a bit more, I would definitely recommend doing so. Less supplements, higher quality versus more supplements, lower quality, because the chances are you're probably not getting actually what you've paid for in the first place anyway. So it won't even have the impact. So yeah, protein powder. I personally like a high quality multivitamin. Just makes me feel like I'm covering the bases. Vitamin D, we live in the UK, so definitely outside of spring and summer, or in Cornwall, we can probably get quite deep into autumn as well, but definitely through winter, late autumn, and then the start of the year, vitamin D is going to be really important. They call it the happiness supplement, the happiness vitamin. Fish oil, in the past, I was big on fish oil. I just try and get it from oily fish. Like 1 tin of mackerel is like your whole serving of omega-3 for the week. So for me, I'm just trying to get it in just through my food. However, if that's something you don't enjoy, getting your fish oil in is probably going to be beneficial. And then, the one performance enhancing supplement I would say is creatine. I personally, I kind of like will cycle creatine on and off just haphazardly throughout the year. Wouldn't say that when I have it, I notice anything, but the evidence of the impact of creatine is pretty compelling. So whilst you might not be able to feel it, I think the work is being done. So if you are looking for something to enhance performance and you're not taking it already, creatine would probably be a good one. So we've got a few more. We're on 50 minutes. How do I stay motivated long term without always needing a goal like a race or a fat loss deadline? Oof, that is a hard question to answer, but a very good question. How do I stay motivated long term without always needing a goal like a race or a fat loss deadline? I think it's good to have goals in place, but it can also be a trap. I know it's a trap because I speak to hundreds of people every month, and so many have their whole fitness history has been peppered with these, oh, I got in shape to run this marathon, or I got in shape to do this, or I did this. And then every single time they go back to where they started after that goal, that milestone had been hit or that event had happened. What that tells me is that was no actual core fundamental habits or mindset change was built during that time. It was purely with that goal in mind. And then once the thing happened, whether it was a race or a goal, a milestone, whatever, then all the habits went back to where they were before. Maybe it happened gradually, maybe it was instant, whatever it was. That tells me that those core habits were never built. So I do think it's very important not to rest on those things and that be your sole source of motivation. I would also challenge that question in its entirety and say, to be blunt, you're never going to stay motivated long term. Motivation is a finite resource and it runs out. With motivation, you'll find it usually comes from a pain or a desire. So the pain could be you catch yourself in the mirror and you're like, man, I don't like the way I look. It could be you wake up in the morning and you feel stiff and you're like, man, my body's not working the way it used to. Could be the energy crash in the afternoon. Oh, I'm so fed up of feeling so shitty in the afternoons. I've got no energy anymore. That could be the pain. So off the back of that, you get the motivation, that burst of motivation. The desire is the opposite, right? It could be instigated by a pain, or it could be, I want to be like this. I want this. I want to achieve this. I want to feel like this. I want this for myself. So the desire is more about what you want. The pain is more about bringing yourself back up to that baseline. And they cross over for sure. And what you typically get is your motivation flame gets relit by one of those things, but the flame always burns out over time. So the problem with relying on pure motivation is that it will go. No one that's always in shape for decades and decades and decades is always motivated. The difference is that they just do the thing. They don't let motivation, they don't let emotions, they don't let scenarios like dictate their ability to actually be consistent and take action on what they're doing. So whilst they might have a new fat loss deadline, whilst they might have a race, that is not the only purpose of what they're doing. And I would actually say that the more you can dial in on just taking the small actions every day rather than feeling like it has a grand purpose, the easier it's going to be. Because the brutal truth of being healthy and in shape and fit is that you have to do this forever. There's no stopping. And I'll be honest with you, and that's probably one of the main issues with so many things out there, is that it's an on-plan, off-plan mindset. It's let's start this, let's do this for X amount of time, and then you'll be where you want, and then everything goes back to normal. Well, if you go back to normal, then how you were before is going to return too. Okay. So if you are an outward expression of your habits. So if you go back to the old habits, you will become those habits again. So you really need to find ways of taking action on those simple foundational things every single day. And motivation is not going to be the thing that gets you there. So you've got to understand, we've talked about this on previous episodes, like why do you actually want to do this? So the goal, why you want to lose fat is not just to lose fat. Why you want to do that marathon is not just to do a marathon, right? There's something bigger. So understand what that is. A great exercise you can do is the 7 whys. So it might be, why do you want to lose fat? For this reason. Why? For this reason. Why? For this reason. That's a really good way of exposing those deep reasons for why you want to do something. So really understanding that why is something that can keep you going. The other thing is just reflecting, being aware of how you feel every single day. How do I feel when I do this, when I make the right choices? How do I feel when I don't make the right choices? And how do I want to feel? That's a way of just keeping that motivation flame like ticking over a little bit. I wouldn't say it was quite motivation, but it's just staying aware and staying in the moment about what you actually want. And then the other thing is enjoyment, right? So actually doing things that you actually like. If you follow an extreme diet, eating foods that you hate, if you follow a workout program that creates loads of friction with your family and makes you have to miss work, how long are you actually going to keep that up? So it's about finding a way of eating that you actually enjoy and finding a way of training that fits with your life and you actually enjoy. If you can imagine a scenario where your workouts feel really manageable, you're getting results, it doesn't create friction with your life, the way that you're eating stuff you enjoy all the time, you don't have to be super meticulous, you don't have to follow a strict meal plan or crazy rules, you can eat out with friends once in a while. It doesn't require motivation to do that because you're getting all the benefits without any of the downsides. The mistake that we've been led to believe is that we have to do something crazy and extreme and it's on plan, off plan in order to get the results. So we have to stay super motivated in order to do it by putting these deadlines or these goals or whatever in place. If you actually make it a way of life and build it into your life in a way that's sustainable, that you enjoy, and you stay aware around that, that motivation is not required. You can still use it once in a while, even if you've been doing the thing, going through the motions for years, and then something's going to remotivate you and you're still going to get those ebbs and flows, but it's actually something we talk about a lot, which is raising your floor, raising your ceiling. Race goals, fat deadlines, they're about raising your ceiling. I'm here and I need to up the intensity to achieve this goal. Raising your floor is about what does the mundane day-to-day baseline actually look like? So that even if you have this deadline or this goal, if you raise your floor, then you only fall to this point, which is maintaining a much higher quality state of health and fitness. So really concentrate on raising the floor and then you can play around with the ceiling. And that's what's going to keep you feeling good and keep you in great shape long term, instead of just ebbing and flowing between hitting that ceiling and then falling to a very deep floor, which you're not happy with. How has your training changed now that you're a dad and running a business? Great question. So the main thing that's changed is time, clearly. So when you become a dad, when you run a business, you have a lot less time than say I did in my 20s. That time, there's almost 2 points on time that I want to talk about. So the first is actually the physical time that you have available to do the thing, whatever that is. You've got to compress that into a much smaller window, typically, unless you're making sacrifices elsewhere, whether it's to your family, your responsibilities as a husband or wife, partner, and the responsibilities to your business, things that need to be done as well. Then the other one, which isn't really talked about, is actually that kind of buffer time around doing the thing. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was single, well, on and off single, no kids, had my business, different business, but it was super free. I didn't do crazy hours. I could work at any time if I wanted because I didn't have any other responsibilities, so I could be flexible. There was so much kind of buffer time. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll just go and work out like in an hour or something. Like it was all on me. I had no one pulling me in any direction. And then when I was working out, it could just be, yeah, I'm just going to mess around on my phone for half an hour, or yeah, I'll just stay here for 2 hours, or whatever it is. There was a looseness to it, right? So it wasn't just the actual time I was working out itself. That could have definitely been more efficient, but it was the looseness and the casualness around it as well. And that is actually the main thing that goes when you become a dad and you run in a business, because you can technically still do a 45-minute, an hour workout, right? But you don't have that time to fuck around, to be blunt, right? Around that, because that time needs to be intentful, it needs to be purposeful, and you need to get to it. So I think that's the two things is, one, being super purposeful, super intentful, purposeful. Stick with purposeful. Super purposeful with your time, and having a plan, knowing what you need to do, and not wasting time thinking about what you need to do and whether it's working and doubting yourself. With that, having the plan, being intentful with your time, the key with that is that if you don't do that when you are busy, you will lose time, you will lose moments, and you'll struggle to actually take action. If you want things to happen when you are busy as a father, partner, businessman, you need to be so dialed in with how you spend your time. So if you have that slot for 30 minutes, it's like go and seize it by the horns. If you have that hour to do that call, go and take it. If you need to fit this task into this time, go get it done. Something I mentioned before, Parkinson's law, which is work fills the time allocated, which can be applied to many different things, right? And I'm sure you've all had moments where, let's say, John, you've got 4 hours to do this task. Okay, cool. It might have been a task that typically you could take 2 days over. You've been given it in 4 hours and you get it done. Easy. So the same could be said of workouts, the same could be said of work. But when you do have all that stuff going on, you need to make it count and make that time count. So how that's practically changed for me is that I work out a lot less. So in the past, I would have been doing yoga for 90 minutes and then 2 hours training a day of like calisthenics. So a lot more training volume, like probably 5 or 6 times a week what I would do now. That's the main one. And then within that, obviously making it super efficient, using strategies to make my workouts more effective, more efficient. And they're the systems that we use with clients now. Most of our clients are parents and they're, very successful. So they do demand a lot of their time. So it's about making that time as effective and efficient as possible, but most importantly, doing it in a way that's like sustainable as well. I think a lot of this goes back to some of the things we've answered already. So having those daily non-negotiables that keep you on track, being flexible and adaptable with how you approach it, that imperfect action. Oh, this isn't a perfect scenario that I would prefer, but okay, let's embrace what we do have. So yeah, that's the other point, right? Focusing on what you can do versus what you can't do. You always have to do that when you're busy. If you are always thinking, I used to be able to do this. This is what I should be doing. Oh, I want to do more. You're telling yourself a narrative that's going to make you feel shitty. It's going to hold you back. It's going to stop you actually embracing what you do have and making the most of it. No one externally can see any of that. No one cares, right? It's literally a story that you're telling yourself. So you've really got to embrace the moments that you do have and make the most of them. And a lot of that is about being super proactive with your time, not messing around, having a great plan in place, having an effective, efficient system, and having people around you that help you actually achieve that. Last question. If I can only focus on one thing right now to improve my energy, my health, my body, what should it be? Challenging one. One thing. Who sent me this question? Okay. One thing. If I can only go focus on one thing right now to improve my energy and body, what should it be? Obviously, it all depends where someone's starting from and what the different components of this look like. But I personally believe that the way that you eat is by far your biggest lever. You'll have probably heard the saying that, I think it's around fat loss, but they basically say like fat loss is 80% diet, 20%, 80% diet, 20% exercise. And I find that to be fairly true. I think it's very hard to live a life of energy and positivity and have a functional, healthy body if you don't sort the food component out. The number one thing I would do is go look at your diet and go, am I eating foods that are serving me and fueling my body right now? So we've talked about the formula earlier in the podcast. If you are just listening in now, I definitely recommend going back to that formula and what that looks like, because that will basically answer this question. But if I was to say, oh, I'd go and do some strength training or I'd start going on walks, yeah, those things are definitely going to help. But if we're talking about one thing, what's going to have the biggest return on investment, it's definitely going to be addressing your nutrition. Now, all of these things, any positive action that you take, one of the benefits of doing it isn't just the direct impact of doing it. I do strength training, so I'm going to get stronger. I improve my nutrition, so I'm going to have more energy and have better digestion and feel better, and the countless things that come from doing that. I'm going to get a few more hours sleep, so I'm going to wake up feeling more refreshed, more focused, blah, blah, blah. The indirect consequence, which can happen from any of those things, which is why I like the idea of one thing, because it's the knock-on effect of doing that, is that they are then going to make it easier to go and do the other things. And in fact, it'll probably create that catalyst to go and do those things. So if you improve your nutrition, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more aware. So you're probably going to be thinking, oh, cool, like some exercise would be nice right now. Or yeah, it's going to be good to get like an early bedtime. Or yeah, I'm not going to have that like go out for those pints on Friday night. I'm going to do something else with my friends, like whatever it is, right? So that knock-on effect of making a positive step is actually going to then indirectly start improving those other areas. So I would say nutrition is your biggest lever, but if it feels like something you don't want to address right now, start doing some simple strength training, just simple bodyweight stuff. Keep the barrier to entry low, squats, push-ups, a pulling movement, whatever it is, short sessions, and then just build from there. Because if you go in with intensity, like we've talked about earlier, in any of these things, it's just going to make it harder to be consistent. So build up some consistency, take the small actions, and then you can build from there. And then just see where that goes, like over time. Oh, I've been eating well this week. Like now we can add in a bit of exercise. Now we can maybe start getting a bit better sleep. So building from there and then seeing where it goes. But definitely figuring out the diet side, eating whole foods. In fact, if you've said one thing, like nutrition's too broad, I'm going to say eat whole foods. Focus on eating single ingredient foods. That doesn't mean that you can't combine single ingredient foods into a meal. It just means avoiding processed foods, avoiding ready meals, avoiding things that you don't know what the ingredients are. So single ingredient foods could be steak, eggs, salad, like lettuce, apples, bananas, hazelnuts, anything that's got one single ingredient in the whole thing. Focus on eating those most of the time. It's going to be an absolute game changer. I guarantee if you only made that change in 6 months' time, you will be a completely different person. Absolutely guaranteed. So that's a wrap, guys. I hope you enjoyed that one. I've just been riffing for 70 minutes by myself. I'm probably going to lose my voice now. If you have any other questions, please just fire them as comments on the podcast or drop me a message on Instagram. I'll be uploading this soon, later today. Lots of love.
and see you on the next one.